Pray with me, if you will. Lord, we come in many different ways this morning. Some of us come excited to be here, ready to worship. Some come reluctantly. Some of us come not really knowing what we came to. Some even come cynically or doubting. Lord, you've promised to meet us however we come, and more than that, you've promised that when your word is open and read and heard, that it changes us. So we ask that you would change us by your word this morning. Lord, change me even as I preach your word. We pray these things in Christ's name. Amen. Well, good morning to you. My name is Derek McCollum. I'm one of the associate pastors here at First Pres. It's really wonderful to see you all. I haven't gotten the chance to meet all of you yet. In fact, really just a few of you, but I'm looking forward to getting to know you better as the days go along. We are excited to be here with you. If you know where we've been in the story, in Joshua, we really have been recounting Israel's great journey from Egypt as God had brought them out of Egypt, brought them through this wilderness in Sinai, crossed through the Red Sea on dry ground, and then brought them up to the edge of the promised land that he had promised to give them. And where we've been here, just a chapter before, God has actually taken his people through a body of water on dry land, and they are poised then to enter Jericho in the promised land. We're here in chapter 4 then of the book of Joshua. Listen as I read verses 1 through 7, and then skipping on to verses 19 through 24. It's printed also in your order of worship if you'd like to follow along. When all the nation had finished passing over the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Take 12 men from the people, from each tribe a man, and command them, saying, 'Take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight.' Then Joshua called the 12 men from the people of Israel, whom he had appointed, a man from each tribe. And Joshua said to them, 'Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and take up each of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the people of Israel, that this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever.'" And then on to verse 19. "The people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they encamped at Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up at Gilgal. And he said to the people of Israel, 'When your children ask their fathers in times to come, what do these stones mean? Then you shall let your children know, Israel passed over the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up for us until we passed over, so that all the peoples on the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you may fear the Lord your God forever.'" This is the word of the Lord. Not long ago, I watched the movie The Notebook. Now, I know I just lost half of you. It's dangerous coming up here preaching your first sermon and starting out with a romantic comedy. Guys, stay with me. I promise it will get better. But if you've seen The Notebook, and come on, guys, you've seen it, you know you have. You know that the story it opens up with a couple in a nursing home, an elderly couple in this nursing home, and this man is reading a story to the woman. And he opens up and he starts to read this story. It's a beautiful love story. It's a story of two young teenagers and the summer that they spent in love with each other. This full summer falling in love as these young teenagers. One, a country boy, local country boy there, and this rich heiress young girl. Now, you probably could have guessed it, but the rich heiress's parents weren't too happy when they found out about this little summer fling with the young country boy. So as they parted after the summer and went kind of their separate ways, the boy, whose name was Noah, writes this girl, Allie, he writes her a letter every day, sending her to remind her of his love for her. But Allie's mom takes all the letters and never shows Allie any of the letters. So she has no idea. She thinks that Noah has totally forgotten her. Well, time goes past a little bit. World War II comes around. Noah actually goes and fights in World War II, and then when he comes back, they end up back in the same town again. And over the course of this time, Allie has actually become engaged to a young man who her parents approve of very much. He's exactly the kind of man they would like her to marry. But as you can imagine, they end up in this same town, right? And they realize that they're still in love with each other. And Allie's really faced with this big decision point. Who's she going to choose? Is she going to choose the man she's in love with and has been for some time, or the one that her parents would like her to marry? And at this point in the story, they flash back again to the scene with this older couple in the nursing home. And as this woman is reading, or as she is listening to the story, we find out that it's actually her story. That's Allie. And it's Noah who's reading her the story. And she's just starting to put the pieces together to when she's figuring out who should this woman choose, she finally realizes, oh, that's me, and I chose that. See, she had gotten dementia. And just before, when she had just found out that the sickness had come on, she wrote everything down in a notebook. She wrote her whole story down in her notebook, and she gave it to her husband, Noah, and said, when I forget, when I start to lose the memory, read me this story, and I'll remember, and I'll come back to you again. The story that we just read in Joshua 4 is about a very similar kind of thing. God tells Joshua to have the people take stones out of the river and set them up as a memorial so that they might remember whenever they forget what happened. See, Israel kind of had this problem of forgetting. You see it actually foreshadowed a book before in the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy really is an extended sermon that Moses preaches to the people as they are about to cross the Jordan. Really, just before Moses dies and Joshua takes over, he preaches this wonderful sermon to them, recounting God's law, recounting the mighty deeds of his law and his works. And it's really encapsulated in chapter 6. This is what Deuteronomy 6 says. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. He's telling them to be careful, to remember some very key things. And then he goes on to explain why. When the Lord your God brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you a land with great and good cities that you did not build, houses full of all good things that you did not fill, cisterns that you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you eat and you are full, take care lest you forget the Lord, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. See, God knew that Israel was prone to kind of twisting the facts a little bit. That's a pretty nice house I've got there, right? It's a good-looking vineyard spread across the hills over there. I'm actually doing pretty okay for myself. Feeling pretty good about the way that things are going here in Canaan. Same kind of thing that I do all the time. I think, I've been nice to people for a little while. I passed on a little wisdom to my children this morning. I felt like that was good. I actually even cleaned the dishes last night. It's pretty good. I've strung together probably 3 good quiet times in a row this week, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I'm feeling like maybe I'm okay. Maybe I'm doing all right. Of course, the danger in that is that I forget about what happened 4 days ago, right, when I was yelling at my children, when I was harboring all kinds of anger and resentment toward my wife, when I didn't want to have anything to do with God's Word. But there's really probably an even greater danger in thinking that. Because here's the danger in starting to think that things are okay about you, is that you actually start to connect what you do with who you are, as if one thing leads to another. And you start to convince yourself that my identity is based on my actions, that who I am is actually based on what I do. And so what happens when we base our identity on our actions? Well, if things are going well, we feel really good about ourselves, right? I'm doing great. I'm feeling good. I must be okay. And God must think I'm okay. And my relationship with Him must be in pretty good standing, and everything's going to be all right. Now, the inevitable action after that, the inevitability of that is pride, right? And why not? I mean, if I'm the one who's done it all, if I'm the one who's actually building my own identity, I might as well be a little bit prideful about myself. But what happens when things aren't going as well? All right, what happens when I'm struggling with sin? What happens when I'm hurting? What happens when I'm doubting? What happens when I'm not sure what to think? I got two choices then, right? I mean, I can either sweep it all under the rug, put on my nice Southern smile, tell everybody everything's okay, and pretend. But that doesn't usually work out well, right? Because it starts to just kind of eat from the inside. And at some point, it leads us down the path of despair. Because we finally become honest with ourselves and we say, well, if my identity is based on my actions, and I'm really, truly, honestly looking at my actions, then something is desperately wrong with me. Verse 6 that we read says that God told Israel to gather these stones together so that they might be a sign to them. Now, a sign is something that points towards something else. A sign is actually a symbol of something else having happened. It's a symbol that your situation is based not on something that you did, but on something that's actually been done to you. Think of the old adage, I don't know if, in Texas people say this kind of thing, I don't know if they say it in Louisiana. When you come upon a turtle on the top of a fence post, you kind of wonder, how did the turtle get there? Right? Because turtles don't just jump up on top of fence posts. That's a good question to have, and that's what a sign is supposed to do. These stones that Israel were to set up were to be a sign to them, to make them ask that question. Let's remember where the stones came from. They came from the middle of the river. Something big had to have happened in order for those stones that used to be in the middle of the river to get on the other side of the river. And Joshua says that's the right question to be asking when you walk up on this and say, what in the world are these stones doing here? How did they get here? What do these stones mean? Something must have happened. One of my favorite theologians, a man named Christopher Wright, he writes this: in the Bible, God is always the subject, not the object of salvation. What that means is this: salvation is the active work of God for us. God does it. God achieves it. God is the active subject. Salvation is not something that we have to work for in order to persuade or manipulate God to let us have it. God is not the object of religious actions that we have to perform to get salvation for ourselves. God is the subject who has accomplished salvation for us. See, we are called to remember that God is the one who's done the saving, to remember that God is the one who has actually done something mighty in our lives. That's the first part of remembering. But we're also called to remember who's been saved. We're actually called to remember what God has done in us, both what we were and what we are, since God has worked in us. If you flip over to the New Testament book of Ephesians, you'll find something really wonderful going on. The Apostle Paul, who wrote the book of Ephesians, it really fills the whole first chapter and a half with all this just wonderful theology of what is true about what God has done. In fact, in grammatical terms, all of the verbs are indicative verbs. Indicative verbs tell you what's true. Imperative verbs tell you what to do. And in the first chapter and a half of the whole book, you can't find a single imperative verb. It's all indicatives. This is what God has done. This is who you are. This is what amazing things have happened. You've got to get all the way down to verse 11 of chapter 2 before you find an imperative verb. And guess what that verb is? Remember. Let me read it to you. Remember that you were at one time separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now, in Christ Jesus, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. Paul is simply reminding us, simply asking us to remember who we are. Remember what God has done for us. Remember who you were, and remember the amazing work that God has done in you. That you were lost, and now you are found. You were an enemy, and now you are called a friend. You were an outsider, and you have been brought inside. God has brought himself near to you. See, who you are is not dependent upon what you do. Your identity is not dependent on your actions. It's fully and finally dependent on the actions of another. Who you are is who you are because of what Jesus has done. That means if you're hurting, that your identity is not failure. Your identity is son, beloved by your Father. That means if you're struggling with sin, that your identity is not worthless like it feels like it is. Your identity is son, beloved by your Father, accepted, loved. If you're doubting, your identity is not weakling. If you are Christ, then your identity is son, beloved by your Father. Here's another movie reference, the movie Blood Diamond, and I may have gotten the guys back on this one. The movie Blood Diamond is a movie about the diamond trade in war-torn South Africa. It's also a movie about a father and his search for his son. The son, whose name is Dia, has been kidnapped by these warlords. He's been actually forced to fight. He's been drugged. He's been made to witness horrific things. He's become a child soldier. He's been brainwashed, and he's forgotten who he is. And his father sets out on this mission to go find him. And there's this one wonderful scene in the movie where his father finally finds him. He finds the camp where his son is, and there's this encounter between father and son. And he comes hoping to embrace him, but the son comes with a gun. And he's got the gun pointed right at his father's face. And it's, of course, tense. You're wondering, what's going to happen? Is this kid going to kill his father? And his father just starts to gently talk to him. And this is what he says. He says, Dia, what are you doing? Dia, look at me. Look at me. What are you doing? You are Dia Vindi of the proud Mindi tribe. You're a good boy who loves soccer and school. Your mother loves you so much. She waits by the fire making plantains and red palm oil stew with your sister, Inyata, and the new baby. The cows wait for you. And Babu, the wild dog who minds no one but you. I know they made you do bad things, but you're not a bad boy. I am your father who loves you, and you will come home with me and be my son again. By remembering who his father was, Dia could actually remember who he was. Those are the things that we have to be reminded of too. Because like Israel, we're forgetful people. We forget who we are. We forget the love of our Father. So how do you do it? Let's get practical here for just a second. How do you go about this process of remembering? Well, the text calls these stones not only signs, but actually a memorial as well. A memorial really brings that aspect of perpetual remembering in. It's something that's supposed to remind them over and over. It's a recurring reminder of who God is. And Joshua says in the text that the stones are there to this day. Now, whatever that day was that he wrote it, but they're not in Baton Rouge. They're not on the other side of the Mississippi. unfortunately for us. But I want to tell you this morning that actually we have something much better. That God has given us what we call the means of grace. That He has given us His Word, His revelation to us, written down so that we might actually read it, that we might actually know Him through it, that we might actually get to know Him. And I would encourage you to do that. Go about the process of remembering by getting to know His Word. Bathe yourself in it. Consume it like food. I have a friend who says, let the Bible run through your house like a 2-year-old. The parents here know what that means, right? It means it's going everywhere and it's causing a mess. That's okay. Let the Bible get you a little bit messy. Get in and remind yourself of who you are. I will tell you that the times that I have forgotten the most have been the times that I just simply haven't been in God's Word. And we forget. If we don't have water, we get thirsty. He's also given us sacraments. Baptism, the Lord's Supper, visible words, visible signs for us that we might actually know and remember. Remembrances. More than remembrances, really, because what the Bible actually says about the sacraments is that they actually don't just make us remember, they actually do something to us. They actually work to change us. That the Spirit is at work nourishing our faith as we participate in being cleansed in water, being fed by His food. I'd also encourage you to keep some reminders yourself, some personal reminders. Little reminders of what God has done for you, not only of who He is, but what He has done. I had a professor in seminary who kept a spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet, he listed all of the attributes of God, and then he put scripture verses beside all of them. And then he had a column for his mom and a column for his dad, and he would put check marks by the places where his mom and his dad actually showed those attributes of God, where they actually reflected those attributes of God. And then what he did was he went and he took a highlighter and highlighted every place where there was no check mark. And he memorized those scriptures. He did that because he knew that those were the places he'd be most prone to forget, because he hadn't seen it in his life. He knew that's where he would be most prone to forget who God was. Memorizing Scripture is a wonderful tool in that. It's a wonderful remembrance. I'd also encourage you even to write down even small ways on your phone, on a pad of paper, things that the Lord has done in you. Sometimes I think when we go about a long life, it's hard to see the Lord at work in the everyday. It's almost kind of like growing a garden. If you stand there and look at it, you're not going to be able to see it grow much, right? But if you go back a week later, you'll be amazed. Wow, look at all this growth. If you write something down that the Lord has done, go back 5 years later, even 6 months later, and you'll be able to say, my goodness, look at what the Lord has done in me. Look at the growth that's happened. We're actually going to have a chance for you to do that today. There's going to be some cards there where you can write down remembrances, memorials of what God has done for you. In closing, let me also just say that we need to remember not just what we've been saved from, not what God has done in us, but also what we've also been saved to. I mean, what's the point of all of it? What's the point of the remembering? What's the point even of God bringing His people through the Jordan? Well, He says so actually in verse 24. This is what He says. The first reason is that so all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty. What He's saying is that the reason that God is doing this is so the world might actually know who He is, so that the world might see His might, so that everyone might actually see His glory. Boy, that's a cosmic mission, isn't it? That's an amazingly large cosmic mission that God is on. And here's the second part. He says not only that all the people on the earth may know, but that you may fear the Lord your God forever. To fear the Lord simply means to give Him wholehearted loyalty, or really to worship, fully worship the Lord. The twofold purpose of God is that He might be glorified throughout the world and that His people might actually come to worship Him. Worship and proclamation. And here's the thing, those two things actually go hand in hand. They are tied very tightly together. There's a deep connection between the two because God's people worshiping Him, God's people being loyal to Him, God's people loving and honoring Him actually has a deep effect on the world coming to know Him. In fact, the Bible says that's the way that the world will come to know who the Lord is. Jesus tells us the same thing. Listen what He tells His disciples in Matthew chapter 5. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all those in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. What Jesus says is that remembering who you are, worship, is the way that He is going to actually reach the world and bring glory to Himself and bring others in to His body. That His kingdom and His mission are one and the same. Now, I just want to address some of you who are here and aren't really sure why you're here, right? Aren't really sure if that kingdom, if that body, if that people is for you. Maybe you know you're not a Christian. Maybe you're not sure. Maybe you're doubting. Let me just tell you, keep listening to the story. Let me encourage you to keep digging in. It's a good story. If it's whispering in your ear and you're not sure what to do with it, keep listening. And those of you who have been in church your whole life, my encouragement to you is exactly the same. Keep listening to that story so that you might remember who God is, so that you might remember who you are. It's a good story. It's our story. We're going to spend just a few minutes actually contemplating this. I'd love for you to take that time to ask the Lord to cause you to remember. And then if you could, take out the little pieces of paper that should be there in the pew in front of you and write something down. Write down a testament to what the Lord has done even just this week for you. And then we can put it, and the ushers will come and pass the plates again. And we'd like to collect them because we'd like to see them and we'd like to pray for you. Let me pray for that now. Lord, we thank you for giving us things to remember by. Lord, we really are forgetful people. Israel's story, if we keep going forward, does not get better. And if we are honest, we've got to say that's our story too. We forget you so easily. But Lord, you remember. You have not forgotten us. And Lord, we need things to remind us of your faithfulness. Will you give us those things even now? We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.